Hello, my friends and caffeinated creeps alike, and welcome back to the world of the creepy and the caffeinated, of conspiracies and coffee. Welcome to Tales from the Dark Roast. At the beginning of this whole spooky podcast journey, I had intended to only interview friends or family members, believing I had enough folks in my life to keep me going for years. Well, that turned out to be partially true. Some of them obviously came on the show, but some of them took a hard pass. Not a big deal, really, but this left me in a bit of a bind. Where was I going to get guests for the show without tooling around on the internet for hours, hoping to weed out the honest encounters from all the trolls and creepypasta stories out there? Luckily, some of my guests came through for me and sent me contact information for friends of theirs who would be willing to share some of their encounters. So today's guest is the first of those friend of a friend to come on the show and share their story with the Dark Roast. And what a story it is. My sister Thursday set me up with this guy, and I don't want to give away too much of his story, but I will say that he is the second person I've met who's had a spirit, ghost, or what have you follow them from multiple homes through years of travel and relocation. Though his experiences were probably on a magnitude way creepier than my other friends. So, welcome to the Dark Roast, Carl McKay. Hey, man, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, man. Like I said, my sister Thursday set me up with your information, and we've gone back and forth for a while now over emails. I'm just glad to finally get you on the show.
Yeah, glad to be here. Glad we were able to work it out. I promise this will be more entertaining than the Super Bowl.
Yeah, we are currently recording as the Super Bowl is starting right now. So, but that's fine with me. I'm not much of a Super Bowl guy. It's either hockey or nothing for me at this point. So
yeah, minor league hockey, minor league baseball, the minors really of any sport. That's where I'm at.
Nice. Well, before we get into it, we gotta pay the toll to the Java gods. Are you drinking any coffee or anything at the moment?
Like, I'm drinking caffeine, not coffee, because I have to go to work tomorrow and I have to be up early. So I'm drinking Mexican Coca-Cola that I got here in Texas, and I'm drinking it out of a UFO museum, Roswell, New Mexico koozie, which I thought was fitting for the episode tonight.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, dude, Mexican Coke is so good. We can actually pick it up here in no, I can actually pick it up here in Florida, in like the ethnic aisle. And dude, it's so much better than regular Coke. And I know it's just pure cane sugar, but there is
there's definitely a difference. And I love here, it's just with the regular soft drinks.
Nice.
There's no ethnic aisle or anything. You just go to the soft drinks and there's the Mexican Coke. And I was going to get the pure cane sugar Dr. Pepper in the glass bottles, but they were out. So this is a very close second.
Oh yeah, and being in Texas, Dr. Pepper, that's almost like the state drink, isn't it?
Yeah, that and Lone Star beer.
Nice.
Yeah, so yeah, those are the two state drinks.
Nice. Well, I don't have to work tomorrow, but I also went to the store earlier, and I ended up picking up a very tasty beer that I had to buy specifically because of the name. It's Infinite Ale Works, and it's called Into the Dark Roast. It is an Imperial coffee stout, and it is tasty so far. I'm excited about this.
It's always a risk, a gamble with something you haven't had before, especially with like a coffee stout. So I'm glad it's working out.
Oh yeah, no, this is good, and it's 9% alcohol. So
by volume, I need to find that.
Yeah, it's really good, and I gotta give them a shout out because their box art is really cool. It's like a ship sailing in the darkness, and I guess that's the whole theme. And man, the last line of their box is as you enter the darkness, open up your mind and see where the unknown takes you. And I read that in the store and I was like, yep, this is coming home with me. This is perfect for
the gods have sent you a message.
Yeah. I mean, they couldn't have done any more short of like shooting a beam of light onto it and angels and trumpets. So, but completely off topic. All right. So, as I mentioned in the intro, you've actually had some sort of spirit or ghost or something follow you. Tell me about that and what led into that.
So, little bit of origin story, my villain origin story. I come from a line of it's not psychic, it's nothing like that, but you know, there's people have different sensitivities. You know, I'm not going to say empath or anything like that, but I'm sensitive to, I guess, energy. That's a really weird way to put it. But anyone who knows anything about sensitives knows what I'm talking about, or is sensitive. They know what I'm talking about. So I come from a long line of people with that. My mother has similar sensitivities as me, but much, much stronger. And then my father doesn't have the same sensitivities, but he has different ones. He was a soldier, a career soldier, and he said that it was more like a spiritual kind of thing rather than like a paranormal thing, where he'd be walking on patrol or something, and all of a sudden he'd get a voice in his head or a feeling to like take one step to the left. So he'd take one step to the left, and then a bullet would whiz right by where he was standing. And so he learned to listen to that voice, and it got him home okay every time. So we have different. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that's a useful skill for a soldier.
Very useful. And I talked to him about it one time, just in the last like 6-8 months. And that's when he told me about that. And he told me, you know, it's that feeling you get when you're walking down the aisle in the grocery store and you have a cart and something tells you to stop, and so you stop, and then someone with the cart not paying attention rushes by, and you would have collided otherwise. So it's that kind of feeling. You can't control it. All you can do is hope to recognize when it's happening and listen to what it's saying.
React appropriately. Nice.
Exactly. So with all that being said, I have the fortune or misfortune, depending on who you ask, your perspective and the day, of being sensitive to but it's more like a mix of both of them. But my experiences with Steve, or a ghost called Steve, this is what I named him, are from the paranormal side of it all. And so my whole life I've always been intrigued for some reason with ghosts and stuff, more than like the little kid interest, right? As I got older, it got more intense. And so I remember you said you went to Colonial Williamsburg, I think, for your honeymoon.
Yeah, my honeymoon. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the year after I picked up Steve.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So you took him home, so I didn't have to. Perfect.
Yeah, or he heard you were coming. He's like, I'm gonna hitch a ride with this kid. I don't want to be anywhere around you. Like, no, I don't want to give him those experiences. I want to tease him.
Oh,
but no, so we went out there. It was our first real like full family vacation. We had gone to California, Disneyland or Disney World, whatever it is, in was it 2002, I think 2003. But my dad got deployment orders, he couldn't go, so it wasn't like a proper family. It wasn't a full family vacation,
right?
So this was a big deal because he was deployed almost my entire childhood up until like 2016. And so we were able to have a lull in deployments where we could go to Colonial Williamsburg and to go to Six Flags and was that like Waterworld USA or something like that? And it was a lot of fun for us. We stayed at the Great Wolf Lodge. It was a lot of fun. And I'm a huge history buff. I mean, I'm in the process of becoming a history teacher in the education system. So I love it a lot. So
that's a perfect place to go then.
Exactly. Colonial Williamsburg. What could go wrong with the tour of Colonial Williamsburg? Little did I know. So, they had that asylum there. I don't know if you remember that asylum.
I remember walking by.
That's where I picked up Steve. So I was a little too young to really understand, you know, the sensitivities, know that I was sensitive. All I knew was my dad told us he didn't believe it. And my mom just sometimes wouldn't be able to go into a building. That's how sensitive she is. So,
oh man.
Yeah. So there was one time she was with my brother and they were just out like doing errands and stuff. And there was a cool store that he wanted to check out. And they pulled in, it was like a thrift store, antique store or something. And they pulled into the parking lot and my mom just told him, you know, you can go in, you can look around, take as much time as you want. I can't get out of the car. She had a bad feeling in the parking lot, like 2 rows from the building or something like that. So that's how sensitive she is to stuff. So she's very strong. Usually it takes me getting up to the door. And I think that's because I've repressed a lot of it for, you know, various reasons. But as a little kid, I didn't know any of this, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, cool, it's a history tour of an old asylum. There was a lot of bad stuff that was done here that, thank God, is not supposed to be done anymore. Hopefully it's not. And so we went on the tour. I love the history side of it. I didn't feel anything, nothing like that. But I know my mom had to sit outside. And so I went through with my brother, sister, and dad, and it was a lot of fun. We saw a lot of cool stuff. I loved it. Then we did, the ghost tour and stuff like that you talked about, and then the rest of the stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how much longer after that is when everything started, but it was a very clear point. I did not have any experiences before going to Colonial Williamsburg, and things started happening sometimes after Colonial Williamsburg, and that was in 2007 or 8.
Okay, and how old about were you?
I was 15,
remember?
16.
Okay.
So I mean, I was mid-teens. I was almost a legal adult.
Gotcha.
And so that was about a year. We went there about a year and a half before my family moved to Germany, and I'll get to that part. Because apparently he wanted to go sightseeing on my dime too. So, I woke up one night. Well, I think before the bed shaking started, I had a very clear night terror that over the last couple years I've been thinking is related to other stuff. And I mentioned to you a little bit when we first started talking through the emails about the dream things, the dream demon things, the best way I can describe them. So that was like the first experience that I can trace to anything. And because it wasn't a nightmare, it was something else. So, and then after that, I think is when the Steve stuff really started. So, to refocus on Steve, I woke up in the middle of the night. We had a 2-story house and then a half finished basement. So you had the walls and everything up and all that, but it was still the concrete floor, and it wasn't fully finished. But you could live down there and all that. And so my brother and I were down there, and I woke up in the middle of the night one night. I don't know what time it was. Knowing my luck and sensitivities, this is probably 3 a.m. witching hour. So I woke up. I don't remember the dream, but I woke up and sat upright in bed in pure terror, and the bed was shaking almost Exorcist style, but not like floating off the ground.
But more than just like a rumble from like a passing vehicle or something like that.
Oh yeah, no, we lived in a neighborhood on a dead end street. And so you couldn't even bring it. I mean, you couldn't even bring an 18-wheeler, and it wasn't the room that was shaking. It wasn't the floor. It was the bed. It was specifically the bed, because there were times where I would get out of the bed and I'd be fine and everything else would be fine, and I'd see the bed shake a little bit and stop.
Oh man.
So yeah.
Man, like that would freak me the hell out today if it happened. But as like a 15, 16, even 17-year-old kid, I'd flip my shit. I'd probably end up in my parents' room like, can little Billy come let me sleep here? I can't stay in my bed. So
well, see, now I've developed, and I'll get to it as I get into the more how the experience went on, but I have a certain set of skills now.
There's number
Imagine
one.
Like the Exorcist meets Taken.
Nice.
So that was the first time, and I thought, maybe it was a bad dream, maybe it was me shaking, because I was shaking because I was 15, 16 years old, and I just woke up thinking my bed shook. It was a violent shaking.
Right.
And so I didn't think much of it. I was freaked out, but I even when I would be free, by this point in my age, I was able to start like critically thinking and breaking things down, right? For like spooky things, because I didn't want it to be a spooky thing. I wanted it to be normal, so I wouldn't be scared.
Right, so you're trying to debunk it. So like, okay, it's not a ghost, it's this, which is causing this, and
exactly. And for a couple of years, I thought it might be me having some type of seizure. And I talked to a friend of mine who was epileptic and described what it was, and they said no seizure does that. So I ruled that out. And so, which I was actually kind of hoping it would be seizures, because at least like, oh hey, it's not a ghost shaking my bed to wake me up at 3 a.m.
It's just my mind literally like going crazy. So because you might be able to get like pills or some sort of medication.
Yeah, there's a way to treat it that doesn't involve threatening an otherworldly being, which I did eventually. We'll get to that. And so some time goes by and it doesn't happen for a long time. So I'm like, okay, one and done. I did hear voices coming through the vents at some points, and I'd say I never like being absolute, right? So 70 to 85% chance that they were not my parents' voices trailing down from the vents from the top level. And I only say, again, not being an absolutist, but I'm that certain because the voice sounded like a woman in her, uh, early to mid 20s tops, and a much older man, like 50s or so. And my parents were, I don't know, like 40, 45, somewhere around there tops, so they were not matching the age of the voices at all.
Right.
And so I could never make out what they were saying, but I could clearly hear it was two separate people, a man and a woman, talking. It wasn't the air coming through the vent or anything like that. It wasn't a TV show because there was no soundtrack, laugh track, anything. It was two distinct voices coming down the vents.
It was clearly a conversation being had.
It was clearly a conversation, and that wouldn't ever wake me up. I'd be laying in bed, or I'd wake up, to go to the bathroom or something, and then I'd hear them coming down the vents. And I don't think that's related to Steve, but it all started around because we moved to that house in 2006 and left in 2009 because military family, moving around and all that. And so
been there, done that.
Yep. So I want to give a little bit of advice with this next part of the story to anyone listening who doesn't know anything about ghosts and protection and stuff like that. So when we bought the house thinking we were going to stay there until my sister was through high school. So 5, 6, 7 years. We bought the house, and the old couple that owned it heard, they heard that I was afraid of ghosts and stuff like that, and anxious and stuff. And so they, in a completely well-meaning, kind-hearted gesture, had a priest come and bless the house. The second my parents told me this, I was like, this is fine, as the fires of anxiety are blazing around me.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know anything, and I by your reaction, I presume that why that was not a good idea.
No.
So for those who don't know, if you bless a house, yes, you'll most likely, like I say 90% of the time, get rid of whatever's currently in that house for a time. And then one of two things will happen. A, it's going to come back very pissed off.
Yep.
Or B, the blessing will wear off or not be as strong over time, and something worse will take the place of whatever was there. Exactly. So I'm like, well, I would have rather taken whatever was in there than what they just invited in.
Yep. And it's such a weird horror movie trope, and you see it in a lot of stuff, but I've read multiple encounters, heard many stories where they call in a priest, they call in like a hedge witch or a Wiccan, and they call them in and they bless, they burn sage, they do the whole spiel, and things are fine for a time. But like you said, that blessing begins to wear thin. It's like, you have to keep putting your defenses up. You can't just put them up once and that's good forever. You have to keep enhancing them, keep reinforcing them. And once you stop doing that, whatever was there comes back stronger, meaner, or something bigger and badder moves in.
Yep. And I mean, it'd be like if you're a roommate with someone, right? And you're not the best of roommates, but you're not bad. You just don't get along, right? And then all of a sudden they call in the SWAT team and kick you out, but you have a right to be there. You're going to be like, okay, you know what? Now I'm mad. And they're going to come back and just raise hell.
Yeah. I wasn't an asshole before, but
yeah.
Now I'm coming back with a vengeance. Yeah.
What was it? Robin Hood Men in Tights. I was annoyed with you before, Robin, but now I'm really pissed off. And so,
and you think that's what happened when you guys moved in? And
yes, I think those voices had something to do with a blessing. Yeah. Now, thank God the voices didn't follow me, just the ones in my head. But those voices did not go anywhere. And so in total, in the year and a half or so between going to Colonial Williamsburg and leaving Germany, I'd say the bed shake. So that was like 12 to 18 months, give or take, because we went in the summer of, I want to say summer of 2008.
Okay.
and we left summer 2009. So about a 12-month period, ballparking 6 or 7 times. So once every couple months, the bed, which is a lot for ghost activity of that caliber for people who don't know. Anything other than a passing shadow, an orb, or something like that, any physical touch or activity is a huge deal for any kind of regularity. And if it's a poltergeist, it's different. That's a different conversation for a different episode. This, this was a ghost of some sort. I didn't know there was any connection until much later. And so in 2009, my dad gets orders for either Australia or Germany, and it ended up being Germany. Thank God. I think Texas heat is bad. Oh my God. Plus the kangaroos. Those things are like apex. You're not the apex predator in Australia. You're like the bottom of the food chain.
Yeah, and everything there is poisonous. Oh,
everything is, if it's anything, to quote A Million Ways to Die in the West, anything that's not you is trying to kill you.
Yeah. And that is a perfect explanation of what Australia is, because everything there is really trying to kill you.
It's the South America of that hemisphere.
Oh man. So you guys ended up in Germany though.
Yeah, we got stationed in Heidelberg, Germany. It's the base is closed down. We were only there for 2 years, and we left the last year it was open because they were turning it over to the German people and all that stuff, and they were shifting everything to Ramstein, which is a gorgeous base. They have a mall. Anyway, army bases aren't the best. Air Force bases are amazing, and I was Army.
Yeah, my brother-in-law was Air Force, and he was stationed in Ramstein, and they absolutely loved it.
It's gorgeous out there. But I was excited to go to Germany, not only because I'm a huge history fan, like we've established. We're staying in one of the few towns to not be destroyed in World War II, because the Allies were like, this is a great place to put our European headquarters after the war. Let's not level it. And in fact, the only significant damage that was done to that city was the bridge that connected the city to the castle. And that was only damaged because the Germans blew it up when they fled to the castle and the Allies were coming in. There was a brief standoff, and then the war ended. They're like, okay, we're done. So that was it. Everything it survived. So there's like a 1,000-year-old church or something there. And it's amazing. So much history. Mark Twain has an estate next to the castle.
In that German town.
Estate next to the castle. Yeah, the German castle. Yeah. It actually, his was it Huckleberry Finn and or Tom Sawyer were inspired by his journeys up and down the Rhine-Neckar River. And he wrote a memoir called A Tramp Abroad, I think is what it's called, about his personal experiences going up and down on the steamboats and various water vessels through Germany and when he was alive. So that's really cool, because I also love literature and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So it's like the perfect place for a history reading nerd to live. And on top of all that, I'm sitting there like, yes, the voices are going to stop for the most part. The bed shaking's going to stop. I'm free. Guess what I wasn't free of?
The bed shaking.
The bed shaking. So I don't know what took him so long, but we lived on the base, because the Heidelberg base was like 5 or 6 satellite bases making up the larger thing spread out throughout the city. So we were on one of the main housing bases. And I didn't have anything there. Nothing happened there at all. And it wasn't until we moved off base to a house that we were renting that it happened again. And it was a couple months after that. We were only there for 8 or 10 months, not even a full year, before we got orders to go to Kentucky. And so I'm laying in bed, and it was a decent sized room. Decent sized room. I got a bed with an angled ceiling, so if I sat up too fast, I'm a tall person. You can put two. Yeah. And then I fall back down, and then something happens. I go back up.
Yeah.
And so I'm laying in bed, and high school sucks for everyone. So I wasn't in the best place mentally in terms of like stress and stuff, and especially being an Army brat. So a lot of negativity, right?
Just a bad headspace.
Yeah, exactly. And that's for people who wonder why I'm stating that. No, it's not a pour me. It's important for the context of being sensitive and everything like that. Negative energy invites negative energy and vice versa. So I know it doesn't have anything to do with empath stuff for those critics out there. That's a whole other set of critics for the sensitives. And so I'm laying in bed, I'm getting ready to go to sleep, and all of a sudden the bed starts shaking violently. And I shoot my ass out of bed. And I'm standing there, I'm like freaking out because I didn't bring anything with me from Colonial Williamsburg. And I didn't know it was Colonial Williamsburg at the time. I'll get into that. So I didn't bring anything that was possessed or owned by someone else. Everything I owned was new or like, hand-me-downs from my parents.
Right.
So I didn't have any antiques or anything that brought itself with me. And so a couple thoughts went through my head very quickly because I'm a rapid thinker, courtesy of, genetics and stuff like that. So two things hit simultaneously once I got out of bed. Holy crap, it followed me. Holy crap, it ain't attached to an object. It's attached to my ass. I'm the possessed person. I'm the maniac.
Man. Oh, this is not going to go well. Yeah.
And so I thought I was free. Oh, boy, was I wrong. So thankfully, it only happened like a total of 3 times in Germany because we weren't there for very long.
And but then, still, like you said, if you were there for 8 months and it happened 3 times,
that's an average of every 2 or 3. Yeah, which is significant especially for something that has the ability to follow you across the world, going from Maryland to Germany, and to keep doing the bed shaking. And so you'll appreciate this. So I promise I'll keep the swearing down.
Oh, no worries.
So there was one night. It was the last time I'd heard from him for a while. I was laying in bed, bad headspace, bad day, month, whatever. And I was done with life. I was just like emotionally, not emotionally drained, for a while. And so it was just like you were empty emotionally.
Yeah.
And so I was laying there. I'm like, I just want to go to sleep so I can go to work tomorrow. And so the guy worked on the military base. I hitched a ride with my parents, working at the AFI's place. And so I'm about ready to finally doze off to sleep after 2 hours of stress keeping me up, and the bed starts violently shaking. I don't even react. Okay. I'm lying there in bed, pissed off. And I think I opened my eyes. I can't remember, but I didn't even say this out loud. I thought to myself, because by this point I had named him Steve because I thought it'd be a funny name for a ghost.
Right.
And so, and I didn't know the power of naming things at this time either. Had I known, obviously. But so in my mind, I thought very loudly, Steve, if you don't stop shaking this bed right now, I'm going to get up and kick your ass. The shaking stopped immediately. And I didn't hear from him the rest of the time in Germany.
Wow.
I scared a ghost.
Yeah. your emotional, like where you were emotionally and the way you responded was just like, yep. Oh man, this kid ain't playing. I'm
emotional damage.
Yeah.
And so,
hey man, use it to your advantage, I guess. You know,
it's like that old 50s 60s movie where the GI unit gets stationed in an English castle in World War II, and it's haunted by an ancestor, and it tries to scare them. It doesn't work, and so they scare the ghost, and it works.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name, but that's a classic movie. If y'all are interested, look up, soldiers scare ghosts in World War II England. You'll find it. It's a classic movie. Anyway, so I'm like, oh shit, I scared a ghost. I'm the man.
And you just arbitrarily named it Steve because that's
I just arbitrarily named this thing Steve because I needed something to call it when I threatened it.
Or you needed a name, yeah.
Yeah, I gave it a name to threaten it. So it's not nice. Like, oh please, I named you Steve so I could talk to you. No, I named you Steve so I can threaten you.
You yell at you, yeah. And it's funny that you pick Steve because like everyone kind of has like a go-to like throwaway name that they use. And Steve is my name as well. So there's a very good chance. Yeah, absolutely. It's a very good chance that like if this had happened to me, I would have probably named the damn Ghost Steve. Because if I'm telling like a story to a group of friends or bringing something up and I can't use the person's name or I don't remember their name, I'll just be like, and Steve said this. And it's funny, but my wife and I have been married now for 14 years, going on something like that.
Okay.
And her brother's name is Steve. So sometimes I'll throw Steve out there as just the name, and he'll be like, yeah. I'm like, no, not you, Steve. Another Steve. So, but yeah, I probably would have named the Ghost Steve as well, just because that's my go-to throwaway name. So, so you made it through Germany after threatening him.
Yep.
He left you alone, and you still hadn't attached it to Colonial Williamsburg yet, correct?
Right before we left Germany. Right before we left Germany is when I made the connection. So I did my senior year of high school in Germany. Prom was at the castles, which was really cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right?
That's like some Harry Potter stuff.
What was that?
Yeah. That's like some Harry Potter stuff. Like
exactly, or a horror movie thing.
Yeah. Well, oh man, that'd be a great combination.
Right? But so I did my senior year there. And then I did my freshman year of college at University of Maryland University College, which is now University of Maryland Global Campus. So they had like a satellite there, you know, like University of Phoenix and stuff like that. They'll have satellite things. So I did that. I was looking at getting into emergency management and getting my gen eds out of the way. And so I was taking some classes. I did 2 semesters there, but 4 semesters, but their semesters were half of a normal semester. So it was like intensive semesters.
Condensed learning kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It was like 9 or 12 weeks. No, it was like 9 weeks, something like that, tops, 8 weeks. So which was great because I got all my gen eds out of the way, except for like 2.
Oh man, I should have done that. I did like a year and a half. I was like, oh my God, this is killing me. Why am I taking English 101 again? Like, yeah.
And so I was sitting in my psychology class, which there's no way that's a coincidence. I'm sitting in the back of the room and I'm staring, I'm just zoned out at the whiteboard. Kind of, when you're being talked at death by PowerPoint or death by lecture, you kind of zone out. So you're listening for the keywords, but not fully listening. And your mind's kind of empty, not even wandering. My mind was empty. So I'm staring at the blank whiteboard, right? All of a sudden, and trust me, audience, had I not personally experienced any of this, I would not believe it. I would call myself crazy. And I do, but for different reasons. So I was looking at the whiteboard, zoned out, brain empty. And I saw just like less than a quarter of a second, a flash of a mask perfectly on the board. Like an iron mask kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And it had like a frown kind of like cut into it with bars on it, sort of like the Man of the Iron Mask if it was a frown, and then the eye slits and the nose. And immediately I recognized it as, several different things going on at once. So it was the kind of mask that they used on patients back in the day. It might not have been metal. It might have been leather, kind of like Hannibal Lecter, leather or some other, non-metal thing. But it was definitely the kind of mask that they used on, the violent or physically active or incombative patients in mental hospitals. And I made that connection I made that observation. And then immediately afterwards, I'm like, Steve was a patient at Colonial Williamsburg. And I had this revelation in like 2 seconds. So, because that's how fast my brain works, making the connections, right? Everything just snapped into place. And so everything started making sense. It wasn't a demon or anything inherently bad that had followed me. It was a patient that had died in the asylum or hospital when it was still active. And the bed shaking, looking back on it, once I made that realization, was almost like if you're restrained to a bed and you're having a fit or a seizure trying to get up with all your might, because that's exactly what it was. It was all 4 corners shaking violently like you're trying to get up.
Which, like you said, if you're strapped down, that's the way the bed's going to shake.
Exactly how the bed's
strapped across chest, across arms, across legs. And I was curious about that when you sent me the email explaining your experiences, if that's what it was like. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because That
That's
that clears
exactly
up
what
a
it was
lot.
like. Yeah.
So it wasn't that Steve was malevolent. It was just that he
He was
was
reaching
he
out
was
for help.
troubled. Yeah,
He
he
was
was
he
troubled when
attached
he was
himself because
alive.
exactly. So for people who aren't familiar, sensitives are more likely to, of any level of sensitive, are more likely to have something attach itself to them than the normal person, the lucky
Yeah,
person. Um, and so that
it's
can
like
either
the end of
be,
a it's like the end of the Haunted Mansion in Disney World, where as you're leaving, it goes and it shows a mirror, and then there's a ghost and
yep,
like sitting on your cart, and it's like, oh, be careful, don't take them home.
yep, exactly. Well, I mean, all those
Unfortunately, you
fun
don't get
things and
the yeah,
yeah, all
you don't
those
get the
fun
fun of
things
it.
and tropes have an origin somewhere, right?
Hmm.
Whether or not it's ghosts or anything, someone had an experience and it took hold. So go entities, I'll say the word entities is all encompassing, right? They'll attach
Yeah,
themselves to people who are sensitive for usually one of two reasons. One, they're bad and want to do bad things to you, or two, they need help. Thank God it was the need help one for me.
right.
Otherwise I
Because
might
the
have had a fist fight a ghost. I've already almost
yeah,
had a fist fight some demons and various other things for other episodes, and I'm not a fan of it. So
no,
yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Demon tells me meet me at 3 o'clock on the playground. I'll be there at 3 o'clock.
armed
I
to
will
the
show
teeth,
up.
ready to go.
Yeah, they will catch these Catholic hands.
Oh, you need to
So,
put that on a t-shirt. Oh man, just a little priest ready to go. Like, have you ever seen the movie Dead Alive? An old
I
Peter
don't.
Jackson horror movie.
Wait, is that the one? I kick ass for the
Ask
Lord.
for the Lord.
Yes,
Put him on. About to catch these Catholic hands.
that's literally it. So, on the sidebar, relating to catching these Catholic hands, okay, my parents were listening to a Catholic radio station when they were in Maryland a few years ago, and they were talking about a story where I can't remember exactly, but the whole premise was it was in the middle of a mass, right? And everything was going fine, and a couple Hispanic gentlemen, 2 or 3 Hispanic gentlemen, come in from the back, and the Hispanic part is important for the end of the story. I'm not profiling or anything.
Gotcha.
And so they come in at the back of the room and see a statue. It was either a statue of Mary or like a crucifix statue, right?
Mhm.
And so they point, they go over, they haven't disturbed anything, they're not making noise, they're being very respectful. They pick up the statue and they walk out the door. The
In the middle of
deacon is
mass.
confused. Yeah, the deacon is confused. Everyone's confused that saw it. The priest can't just stop mass. And it was a time where the deacon wasn't involved, wasn't busy, and so he could run outside and be like, "Hey, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
And so someone followed him out, a few feet behind him. When they get outside, the deacon is in a fist fight with one of the gentlemen. He's throwing Catholic hands with this gentleman in the parking lot of the church during mass.
Oh my
He's in the
God.
full deacon garb. The dude just in regular clothes. They're throwing fists.
Just because they wanted to steal a statue.
So apparently they weren't stealing it. One of their friends or family members had died, and they were
Okay.
going to, and they needed the statue for their little memorial service. They didn't want to disturb mass, but there was something where it had to be done like right then, right? And so
Gotcha.
they
Like,
came in very, very respectfully, took the statue, and then we're going to do it, in the parking lot, and then put the statue back. How was the deacon supposed to know?
right. He just
Deacon
sees two
doesn't speak
guys walking
Spanish.
out. Yeah.
The deacon doesn't speak Spanish. The gentleman doesn't speak English, but they both spoke Catholic hands. And so they're throwing them left and right. It's like Catholic sign language.
Oh my God.
And so at the end, everything was okay, but it wasn't after the
man.
fact. So
I think we also have the title for the episode now.
I can't ask for the Lord.
Throw
No,
these
save that for
Catholic
the Dream
hands.
Demons.
There we
Save
go.
that one
Yeah,
for the Dream Demons.
we'll
These
save that.
Catholic hands for this
Oh,
episode.
man.
And so, okay, so going back onto the topic. So I
Um,
realized that Steve was
a mental
Steve
patient
was
or
a
patient of
patient.
the asylum.
Yeah. And so I immediately realized he wasn't bad. He wasn't just being a dick because he could. He needed help. Unfortunately, I'm an 18-year-old who can't talk to you.
Yeah.
I can't speak ghost. You can't speak human. All we know are Catholic hands.
And bed shaking.
And bed shaking. And then thought violence.
Oh, man.
And so shortly after that, we moved. Moved to Kentucky. My dad was stationed on Fort Knox. And I transferred my school to Eastern Kentucky University. And so for their Homeland Security program.
Okay.
And because I wanted to get into emergency management on the federal side and then work my way down to the state. Thankfully, none of that panned out in the long run for other reasons, but that was my goal at the time. And so I think nothing happened in the first year and a half I was there. My first year I was in the dorms, and then my second year I got an apartment off campus. And nothing happened that first year, which lines up with the year and a half between moving from Maryland to moving to Germany. So I think it took a lot of effort for Steve to travel, even though he was attached to me. I don't know what I didn't get my PhD in ghost physics or anything like that. I don't know how ghost energy works. There's a correlation there. Very obvious.
He used a lot of it to follow you.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So it took him a while to kind of recharge enough where he could make his presence known again.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so I was in my apartment. Oh, there was another time when we were getting ready to move out of Germany. I was sitting on the main level. No, I was alone. I had headphones on, and I'm listening to music as I work on, I think it was one of my books or something like that. And I hear clear as day in my right ear, not headphone, my right ear, like I didn't have a headphone on. Hello. I threw those headphones off. I'm like, Steve, come on, where are you at? You don't do that. I told you, come at me from the front, not the back.
Yeah, not cool, man. Not cool.
And so that was creepy. And I'd like to think that was Steve, because I had no other experiences of any kind in that house. It was just the bed shaking of Steve. So, and I don't think there was anything else there. And if it was Steve, that's the only time he's ever said anything.
It was just hello.
Yeah, it was just hello. And my mind's like, goodbye.
Yeah.
I was like, deuces. And so I get to the apartment in Kentucky after a year of college. I made some friends and all that, who actually, it's funny. Okay. I promise it's funny. I made one of these friends just as I picked a random person to help move in, and we became best friends. And then we wanted to form a ghost hunting team with some students on campus. And so we printed a couple flyers and put them in like the area, or the cafeteria area. And we had 2 people show up, and those became my friends throughout college. And one of them I'm actually going to see in May for her wedding.
Oh, nice.
That'll be nice. And I'm gonna go slap Mothman on the ass while I'm out there, because it's only like 3 hours away.
Oh, from Mount Pleasant. Nice.
Yep. I'll take lots of pictures for the next time I'm on here.
Oh, man.
So in the apartment, I had just moved in, been there like a month or 2, right? So still a couple boxes to unpack, and I never really fully unpacked from anywhere. That's the inner army rat, and I'm a nomadic lifestyle my whole life. And so there was like 3 or 4 boxes in the back corner of the bedroom. I'm going over, and I leaned forward and to pick it up, and I feel a finger poke me in the right shoulder blade. And it did not feel, I told this to my mom, and I stopped telling this stuff to my parents because they just kind of wrote it off. Which is good, because I had friends be like, yo, my ghost touched me, and they're like, they touched you. And they get really excited. This is before they also experienced Steve, because there were group experiences.
Nice.
And so my mom said it was just like a muscle getting pulled, and I kind of thought that it was a weird muscle movement, but it was the exact size and pressure of someone poking you in the back to get your attention. It wasn't painful or anything. It was just enough. Like if you're poking someone from behind to get their attention, like you want to say something, that's what it felt like.
Yeah, and muscle spasms and pain, those go together. Like you don't get that sensation in your back or anything, especially as you get older. unless there's something going on. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
like someone poking you to get your attention. So yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
And I've had times where my leg or upper arms will just start like spasming. There's no pain. They just start like shooting off. It wasn't that. It was a single boop. That's it. And I turned around. I'm like, Samantha? And so I'm like, okay, that's weird, but that's fine. You know, I told myself it was muscle spasm while I lived there, just so I wouldn't at the time. So I didn't think that, you know, Steve had followed me again.
Yeah.
Because again, I hadn't had any experiences. It was about a year after we moved to Kentucky, and I didn't have anything yet. And then the door started shaking.
So
not
it
at the
went
same
from
time.
the bed,
not at the same
door.
time. Now, if that happened at the same time, I'd be in the Vatican. I'd be hiding in the basement. Okay. No,
the nearest holy place. Yeah.
Right. I'd be the National Shrine in DC with the priests and deacons. No. So after that, I didn't have any bed shaking in that apartment. But what I did have was, it was a 2-bedroom apartment. I had one for a guest room for my parents, because my parents were like a 4 or 5 hour drive away. And so if they wanted to come over, they had a place to stay, or if I had family or friends want to stay over. And so that was the guest room that my brother ended up moving into for a short time. And the door, I always kept it closed. I don't like having open doors in my house that I have to walk by. Plus, I got a weird vibe in that room. And so at one point, I was sitting in the living, so you had an open living room with an open dining room, small little kitchen area. And then if you have your back to the front door area, you're looking into the living room. And then there's like a short little, like 4 or 5 foot hallway, just enough for the guest room door on the left that's facing the bathroom on the right. And then my bedroom door is facing me.
Okay.
So they're like right there. And there's a vent above it. And so the door started shaking. I'm like, oh, great. People upstairs are partying, because it's it's a college town.
Yeah.
But there was no music. There wasn't stomping. That door was the only one shaking. And I'm like, oh, it's just the vent. I stood under the vent. The vent is off. That's the only door shaking.
So it's not atmospheric, and it's not somebody upstairs.
Yeah. So I'm like,
Steve has returned.
Steve the Ghost Part 3, the fucking. And so I opened the door, make sure, you know, a window wasn't busted open. Because that we ended up having issues with the ceiling, and that window would, every time it rained, it would leak like crazy. Maintenance refused to fix it, or do a permanent fix. They put some caulking on it and leave. And I'm like, we literally have to duct tape cups to the window to keep the water from pooling.
Oh man.
Yeah. So I thought it might have been that. But if it was that, when the door was open, it would have been able to move the door a little bit.
Yeah, it wouldn't have just shook in place. It would have shook in place and then eventually closed or opened all the way.
Well, when the door shook, it was closed.
Oh,
that's why I thought maybe, yeah, when the doors were shaking, because I kept that door closed. It's like, bye. So I'm sitting there, and I would always sit on the far right side of the futon, which was away from the front door. So there was the front door, a side table, the futon, and then a side table, and then, you know, a little kitchen area. And so I would always sit on the far right, because I didn't like being right next to the back door. And it's a situational awareness thing for me, raised in the military and stuff like that.
No, I'm the same way, especially as a dad.
Yeah.
I pay attention to my surroundings, and I don't put my back to a door. I see as many people as I can. And, you know, my wife to this day, she finally has realized that that's the way I like to do things. So when we go into a restaurant, she doesn't even try to sit.
Yep.
She lets me she lets me pick my spot before she sits down, because she knows I'm looking for specific things. So,
and the only reason I was willing to sit with my back to the window was because I was on the second story and there was no balcony. So if someone wanted to get at me from that window, they were either going to snipe me through the blinds knowing I was there,
or rappel down.
Or they rappel down. And honestly, if they're going to rappel down Christmas Vacation style to get me, they can have me. They earned it. I respect the effort.
You respect the effort. Yep. I'm with you on that one.
And so, if there would have been a walkway or first floor, oh, hell no. Nope.
Yeah.
And so, So sitting on the far, all that description and stuff, I'm sitting on the far right is where I can see both doors. So I can just see the door handle because it was one of those like, it wasn't a knob, it was an actual handle.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. And so I could see that and just a little bit of the door from of the guest room. So every time it shook, it was closed. And if it would have been open, which it was when my brother lived there and stuff like that, if there was a draft, the door would have moved.
Yeah.
But it never did. Ever. So it wasn't that. And I would be able to feel the draft if I walked into the room and feel a temperature change or something. And I never felt a temperature change. And so I felt the door shake. I ruled out everything logical. And I'm like, well, this is happening. Round 3. And so I told my friends who I'd told about Steve, like, hey, so guess who's here? Steve. And we would always hang out at my apartment because it was off campus and it was, bigger. It was more fun and stuff. They had several experiences with me seeing the door and stuff like that. So I have witnesses to all this. It's not just me imagining things. And so we would always hang out and it was a running joke. That's how often it happened. It was like once a week it was shaking.
What?
Yeah. Bed shaking was once every 2.5 to 3 months. This was like at least once a week on average. And so after a couple months of being there, so the 12 to 14 month mark is when it started. And so in Kentucky. So we would all sit on the futon because we could fit all 4 of us. And the door would shake. It would be like, Steve, we're trying to watch this. It's like a crazy uncle listening to music too loud or something. And one time we got so done with it. I stood up and I shouted at the door, Steve, you knocked that shit off. It stopped immediately.
Wow.
We all looked at each other, and I'm not proud of the noise that came out of my mouth. But it definitely was not a manly scream.
So you go from being authoritative, like, Steve, stop it, to ah!
Basically. Which, hey, you can still be authoritative and scared to death.
Yes, that's true. But not screaming like a 5-year-old girl.
Yeah, exactly. You scream after you get what you want.
There you go.
And so that happened a lot, like I said. But one of the most fascinating Steve things that happens, one of the two, and they're both similar, in Kentucky, was we were all sitting there, and what we would do, we'd watch scary movies that were bad. Mm-hmm. Like, this was when Netflix was good, everybody, where it was a lot of indie horror films and indie films no one had ever heard of. So we'd watch one or two of those a night. Yeah, right. When it was like a $5 a month fee.
Mm-hmm.
And
you still got the DVDs in the mail too?
Yep. And so we used to Mystery Science Theater 3000 bad movies.
Nice.
And it was so great because we're all, 2 of us were like tactically minded, and just generally we know how to survive a horror thing. And I have my own method. I'm not going to say it on a public forum, but it has to do with the kind of the people who usually get killed versus the people who don't get killed.
Yeah.
And the people who get killed are usually ones saying don't go in there. And so I listen to that person inside me, and it's kept me alive and fighting ghosts and all sorts of things. So we love making fun of the stupid people doing stupid things that deserve to die, and then being sad when the people who don't deserve to die because of the stupid people. And so we had so much fun doing that. That's actually how I found one of my favorite genuinely terrifying movies of all time, and its sequel, which was just as good as the first movie, surprisingly. And
these are, because I'm a movie buff as well.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I want to know.
It's coming. It's a found footage movie.
Okay.
It's called Grave Encounters. The first one is a ghost hunting team.
Okay.
And they get permission to do an overnight thing. It's kind of like a parody of Taps. Okay. Which a lot of movies did that. That's not a jab at Taps. It's just, a ghost hunting team. So they had a psychic, they had the camera people and all that, the quote unquote psychic and all that. Right. And so, and then it turns out that it's all real. And this is an extremely haunted, insane asylum.
Ooh.
And no one it's the kind where, no one's ever survived the night kind of thing. I highly recommend it to all the audience out there and to you in particular.
Well, I just Googled it on my phone, and it looks familiar. I can't say that I've seen it, but
might have seen a trailer.
Your opinion for it is selling me on it. But then I just saw that it's directed and edited by the Vicious Brothers. I don't know who the Vicious Brothers are, but they've got me with the name. So.
Right? And the picture on the front with
Yes.
Demon Homeboy. I don't
Oh
play
yeah,
that game.
I'm gonna have to check that out now. So
And then so we saw that, and look, the cover looks bad. It looks like it's going to be a terrible movie that you'd love to make fun of. So we started that, and we're like, oh, first couple things, and then we start seeing the body count go up, and we were like, I've never really screamed in a movie before. I'm not that kind of person. I'll jump, I'll gasp. We were screaming, and like not like fake screaming or fun screaming. We were genuinely terrified, and we stopped it, and we're like, we need to watch something happy. Put something on, for the love of God. And at that point, we started watching trailers for the movies we randomly selected. And so everyone knows it's a movie rule. The sequels are almost never anywhere as good as the first movie. Sometimes they can still be good, but they're usually pretty bad, with very rare exception. Especially with a horror movie. Oh my God, they're usually just so bad. So
because they're just cash. They're usually just cash grabs trying to make profit.
Yeah, and so Grave Encounters 1 came out, I want to say 2009, 2010. Grave Encounters 2 came out several years later, so it wasn't like an immediate straight to DVD kind of thing. It took time. That's how successful it was. So we're like, okay, we're in a conundrum. On one side, sequels are never as good as the first. The downside, we almost had to change our pantalones. The first one, we almost had to change our pants because the first one was so scary. Do we want to risk it? We said no and watched the trailer first, knowing going in it was going to be scary. We had the lights on. We watched it during the day. And it was genuinely terrifying because in the first one, it's a minor spoiler, okay, very minor, it has nothing to do with the plot. First one, we're joking, man, we're seeing a demon, a four-legged demon thing, which is on the cover, that's not a spoiler, coming at us. What the hell are we gonna do? We're in Kentucky. I'm gonna draw and empty my mag. I'm a mag dump into a satanic face, and then I'm gonna kick him. And so it's just imagining going into that place like, I'm never without a firearm nowadays. Like, I'm just gonna shoot it. And the sequel has an armed security guard going in, hearing screaming, and then he empties his mag. And then he's dead. And I'm like, oh, okay.
You know why it didn't work? He didn't have
the bullets. Catholic hands.
It wasn't Catholic hands, and he didn't have the bullets blessed by a priest.
And that's the other side. I need to find a cool priest. I have a dream where I just bring a box, a giant crate, into a church and be like, Father, could you please bless this? Don't ask questions. Just bless the contents.
Or you could go guerrilla style, like in Lost Boys. In the Lost Boys, when they just go into the church and they start filling the bottles with holy water out of the.
Well, that's different. You can get whatever side. You can get gallons of holy water to take home for like fonts and stuff at your house. I actually have somewhere, because my family started getting really into spiritual warfare after we moved to Maryland the second time after Kentucky. There were some other things going on in addition to my stuff, and we started getting really connected to the church again, especially my parents. And so they got little, I've been like through like 6 moves at this point since then, so they're in a box somewhere. But I had a little keychain holy water thing for like a last rite kind of thing.
Oh, nice.
As well as a very very flimsy but reliable plastic bottle with like a cross on it that's meant for holy water. And it had a squirt nozzle on it.
And is that the way it was purchased?
Yes. Oh, it came from the store like that.
Nice.
Yeah, CatholicCompany.com. I'm pretty sure you could get it from there. And so, needless to say, I kept that MF thing on me.
Nice.
And so, thankfully, I never had to use it yet. But I have a running joke where if I ever get into a situation where I'm going somewhere or I'm having some serious issues, I will take the backpack super soaker, to a church and have the Father bless it.
There you go.
I will have a bandolier of water balloons with holy water on them. Holy
Nice.
hand grenade my butt. So I'll go all out. I'm not playing around. That's in addition to like the non-physical stuff, right? And all that. Anyway, so going back to so that was all in response to, you know, demons catching these Catholic hands and all that stuff in an insane asylum. And so we were watching one of those kind of movies, and it wasn't daytime, but it wasn't nighttime. It was like the twilight.
Yeah, that middle area.
So it was a little dark, but it wasn't. And so the apartments had exterior facing doors. So it wasn't like you go into a building and then there's apartments. So they were all like balconies, like balcony walkways.
Gotcha.
And so I was on an end unit, thank God. The stairs, the noisy metal stairs, were right in front of the door. You could hear, and even if someone was tiptoeing, there's like the metal grate stairs up and down. And so we were sitting there, we're just watching our show, making fun of it, and I hear a noise to my left, which is where the front door of my apartment was. I never deadbolted it when I was physically sitting right there with my friends, right? Excuse me, I think maybe one of them was out on a run, like a snack run or something too. That might have been why it was not deadbolted. But so we're sitting there, I hear a noise. I look to the left. I'm not making this up. I know it sounds stupid and crazy. I watched the door handle, not knob, go down and pop up as the door swung open a solid foot and a half. And by this point, my three friends had already looked to the left as it was still swinging. And my first thought was someone got the wrong apartment, and, you know, they were trying to get off to avoid an awkward apology. So my buddy Dave, he was on the far end. The two friends were in the middle, and I was on the other end. So he was on the end close to the door. So he hopped up to like open the door, make sure everything was okay, like with someone in the hallway. There wasn't a damn soul in sight. It was like 2-3 seconds between the door opening and him peeking his head out. There was no sound on the stairs, and no one all the way down the walkway to the other end of the building. There wasn't even anyone outside. No voices, no shuffling of feet, nothing. It was quiet as hell. No, there was no movement or anything. And so and I peeked my head out too, just to make sure, and there was no one. And so it's not like even one of their friends or our friends playing a trick on us, knowing we're watching a scary movie. It was completely empty. And that freaked us out.
Wow. So they witnessed Steve rattling the door inside the apartment, and then they witnessed possibly Steve opening the door as well to the outside.
Yep. Man. If it's not Steve, I don't know what else it could be, because I'm only aware of one physical, while I'm conscious entity do that kind of stuff. There's other things that I'll talk about in another episode if you'll have me back. If I haven't already been banned about the dream stuff. And so I don't think it was one of those, because I've never had a physical encounter with one of those. It's only been Steve. And so, and it lines up with the door stuff with that too, and with the guest room. So that was really weird. And that was probably the biggest act he'd ever done, other than the bed shaking. Because rattling the door, it doesn't take much to do that. But the way it was rattling was like going back to the asylum piece, right? Asylum patient. It was like the door handle was locked, and he was like shaking it, trying to get out. It was that kind of shaking.
So it wasn't like a super, super violent, over exaggerated shake. It was just kind of like just a little bit.
Yeah,
enough to be noticeable, but not enough to like
hear
shake
it
the
throughout
door
the entire apartment. Yeah, it wasn't like he was banging his fist on the door. It was like if a door handle's locked and you're frustrated because you don't have the key and you just shake it, and you're like, ah, that's what it was. There was no pounding, there was no kicking. It was just but the whole door was shaking as a result, because I mean you're shaking the whole handle, and that would go on for up to a solid minute. It wasn't just a quick shake. We're talking a solid 1 minute of activity.
Oh man!
Did anyone ever? Go ahead.
I was going to ask, did anyone ever try to get up and open the door or turn the knob while this was happening?
several times, including the first time that it happened. And I would open it and go into the room and there was nothing there and it would stop. Once the door was open, it would stop.
Okay, so it wouldn't pick back up as soon as you close the door.
Correct. No, it was like a one and done.
Okay.
Because it was almost like going back to the asylum patient thing. You're shaking it to try to get the guard or orderly's attention. Once they open the door, you have the attention you want. Or if they yell at you to stop in an angry enough voice, they stop for fear of reprimand.
There you go.
Or if they interpret it as angry. Because I didn't, when I told them to stop it with my friends there, it wasn't angry. It was more like annoyed, like, Steve, come on.
Yeah.
Like, we're trying to watch the game.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. It's not like the thought violence I had before. But
nice.
yeah, so that was insane. And that was, I think, because I moved out of there. I was only in there for a year. Then I went and did an AmeriCorps program called FEMA Corps, where it was people have heard of it more now, but AmeriCorps is basically the modern, this one, NCCC, National Civilian, no, not national, I can't remember what it stands for. But it's unpaid volunteers for 10 months at a time. Basically like what the Civilian Conservation Corps used to do back in the day. It's a really great program. I advocate for them. I support them all day. But we were kind of in an experimental program where they partnered with FEMA to do more admin stuff for the FEMA employees so they could focus on the bigger level things. So at the time, it wasn't the best, but as I worked with FEMA as a FEMA employee, I loved seeing the program evolve into actually treating them like professionals instead of as a threat. That's a different conversation. But it's a great program. If anyone's interested in it, look it up. But so I was in that and we traveled around a lot. So we did a 6-month stint in Missouri. And we lived in hotels with a team of 10 people. And we got down to like 7 people at the end of it. But so we spent 6 months in Missouri. The first one was in Branson. The second one was in Springfield. And then we did our last stint in Chicago. And this was 2013 to 2014. So I was in the Springfield Hotel. You good?
Yeah, I honestly just thought I heard my door open, which could be
Steve!
either my wife or daughter. Yeah, no traveling,
Steve, you leave him alone.
Not cool.
Threaten to kick his ass. Tell him you will call your Catholic hands having ass friend to come and help you.
There we go. But so you started with 10, down to 7, last in Chicago.
Yeah, and so that's just give like an overview of like what we did. And so we were in our second stint. It was so this was in 2014. Our first one was in the fall and winter of 2013. It was like 2.5, 3 months almost, in living in a hotel in Branson. Then we had like a 2-week period, a 10-day period for a winter break, winter holiday. Then we went back to Springfield, same mission and everything. We just went back to a different location, because they shut down that field office. Okay. And they opened up a new one. And so my buddy and I and my team, I told my team, in a joking manner, you guys just let me know if you hear anything weird. It might be my pet ghost, Steve. And it was like a running joke kind of thing, right? Because if you can't laugh at it, you're living in fear of it. And so, you're going to have to acknowledge it at some point. I acknowledge it in a positive light, especially now that I knew it wasn't a bad ghost. It was just, it was chill. It was just spooky. Right, so my buddy and I, who is actually also from Kentucky, we're going down the stairwell to, I think we were going to make a walk down to the store right down the street. And so walking through the stairwell, and it was a Marriott. So it wasn't like a shady hotel. It was like a Comfort Inn and Suites, but those nice ones. Not quite a courtyard, but that one step down, right? Yeah. And so we're walking down, and those heavy fire doors that are held open by a solid ass magnet. Mm-hmm. As we approached it in the stairwell, the magnet disengaged, which you can only do with physical force, and started closing right as we walked up to it. Steve? We were like 2 or 3 steps from the top of where that landing was, and my buddy and I were like, Steve, no! And I was going to be trapped in the stairwell with a ghost and my buddy. I've seen that movie. I die. So, I ain't about that life. And so I grabbed the door before it closed. opened it, and I looked at my buddy, and he's just like, "Was that Steve?" I'm like, "God damn it, he followed me."
Oh
And
man.
so, which that was only like 8 months after my last encounter with him in Kentucky. So that was pretty quick. And I'm pretty sure it's Steve and not a technical. Those are like the same doors that are in schools where
Yeah.
if it's not lined up just right, yeah, it might disengage. If there's like a draft, there's no way to have a draft here. It was, and even when I reattached it, because we're like, oh, the magnet might have not just stopped working for whatever reason or not have been a good fit. I put it on there exactly how it was, and I tried to force it. I had to like throw my body into it to get this thing to close. It was a serious like hotel fire door magnet, and so yeah, it was like, yeah, there's a chance that it was something practical and logical, but putting everything else into the context, that's also at least 50-50, if not in favor of Steve.
Right.
And so after that, I went back to college. I had like maybe 1 or 2 bed shaking there. The rest of my last 2 years in the dorms, but that was really about it. And I haven't really heard from Steve since. Now I graduated in 2015. So it's been, anywhere from 4 to 6 years since I've last heard from him. My parents were doing, I can't remember the specific name of the prayer, but it's basically a purgatory prayer. Where you say this prayer and, it help, Catholics believe you say the prayer and it helps, get, relieve souls from purgatory and stuff like that. And so I'd like to think that Steve was one of those because I haven't heard from him in so long.
Nice.
I'd like to think that was him. That one of those that they just said random prayers for, was him.
And it just worked. And it worked. Yeah.
Yeah. Poor bat. Well, not only that, it worked in confirmation to faith. That's a whole different thing. But like, poor bastard. How long has he been walking around, let alone attached to my ass, threatening him and spiritually fist fighting him?
And all he wants is some attention, and
all he wants is help. And I'm like,
yeah.
I straight up said, I want to help you, but I can't. I don't have the means. Like, I can't even communicate with you. If he would have been able to communicate, it might have been different. I tried the pen stuff and different means. Which again, if you don't know what you're doing, don't do it. If you haven't 100% identified what it is, don't do it. And even then, you got to be really careful. And I wasn't as careful as I would have been now because I don't have the spiritual warfare experience and knowledge that I have now. And so, but I'd like to think that he was relieved and he's,
nice.
Not suffering anymore, because that would suck. Spending eternity as a ghost in a straitjacket and
a
bed
mask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's some bullshit.
Yeah. No bueno. No bueno.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I haven't heard anything from him at all. Not even like one bed shake or one door rattle. So I would have heard something by now, unless because right about that time is when I started having more like Catholic spiritual weaponry.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly I have a St. Michael's cross and a little mini desk statue of St. Michael striking Lucifer, which is really cool. And some prayer coins that all of those I had blessed at the National Shrine in Baltimore. Unless that had something to do with, because that the timelines about match up. So unless that is keeping him away,
maybe offering you some protection because of the faith.
Those don't just protect against bad; they protect against spirits. Period.
Gotcha.
And so I have like 2 coins and a card in my wallet at all times when I'm out of the house. Those are blessed. And then I have those 2 statues. And then I think there's one other thing I can't remember in the house to add to the wallet protection. So I'm like a walking force field.
Yeah, you're blanket covered.
Base level stuff.
Nice.
It hasn't touched the dream stuff yet, or things that when I'm out, if it's negative enough or bad enough, it can only provide so much protection with the nature of the stuff, right? It'll still protect you, but if it's not like you're walking around with the Pope in your pocket.
Right.
Yeah.
It'd be a little weird.
Weird. Right. Oh, pocket Pope. I'm gonna make that a little pocket Pope.
Oh man. And then get them to bless it. Like, that'd be great.
It'd be the Catholic version of pocket sand. It's a bunch of little pocket popes you throw into a demon's face.
little shurikens, like. Oh man.
So that brings me all the way up to date with Steve related stuff.
Nice. Well, man, I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I think this is probably a good place to wrap it up for now. And
Yeah, I think so too.
I definitely want to get you back on the show though to talk about the spiritual warfare and the dreams and the demon stuff, because that's like it's creeping me out just thinking about it. But I really want to hear about it as well.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, there's an actual manual of spiritual warfare that Catholics have. And in addition to the Bible. I mean, that's the book. And then we have like another book.
nice.
It's written by, I can't remember who it's written by. But it's a priest. A priest wrote it, I believe. And it's just like the different ways of spiritual warfare for Catholics. I haven't quite read it just because, you know, I've lived a lot of it and I've kind of ways that work for me, but there's definitely better ways than what I've done. But it worked. This guerrilla spiritual warfare has worked for me so far.
Nice. Well, we'll definitely have to have you back on and talk about that. So,
And I mentioned to you earlier that I have the document that I wrote up for you, and I forgot. It's not Steve related, but it doesn't quite fit into the other stuff. If you want me to, it's still like paranormal, non-dream, but like not Steve. If you want me to tell it right now, it's just one story.
Yeah, real quick. Let's knock it out.
Yeah, it's a very quick story. It involves a shadow person.
Nope.
Wait until you hear the story. So it was in Maryland, right? This was after the Colonial Williamsburg trip. So before I had even named Steve, there was only one or two bed shaking occurrences at this time, though I had already started hearing the voices, so I knew something was in the house. So the way the house was laid out, there you had so you walk in the front door, and it's like an open air front part of the house. So you have the stairwell going up, and then hanging a left, and you have the open hallway for the bedrooms and bathroom upstairs.
Okay.
Excuse me. So yeah, on the left side, again, back to the front door, you had master bedroom, skinny linen closet, bathroom. And then my like a guest room, kind of recreation room next to that. And then there was like a 5-foot hallway that led to my sister's room and then a closet. And so to the right was the den. And then you keep going, you know, to the left of the bathroom, keep going straight, kitchen, you know, parts of the house that don't matter for the story. So I'm in the den and I finished up whatever I was doing on the computer, and I was gonna walk around to which way was I going? Sorry, I was in the living room and I was gonna go to the den on the other side of the house to get on the family computer. Because this was 2008, not everyone had all the laptops like we do now, let alone smartphones. Right. I had a flip phone.
Dude, I would still rock a flip phone if I could find one that was worth it.
I love those indestructible marine proof ones.
Yes.
That's the one I had. I loved it. And so I just, something possessed me, you know, kind of pun intended, to, instead of going through the kitchen to the dining room and then going into the den, to hang a right and go to the front of the house instead of, you know, walking towards the back, because the living room was in the back of the house. So for some reason I went to the right. And so there's 2 glass windows with curtains on either side of the front door. And the front door had a really nice big oval center to it, with like, not like stained glass, but it was like crystal glass. So like
frosted.
Yeah. And so through angles and stuff. And it was nighttime. So I'm walking, and as I turn on the light just for the above the door. So it's like 3 lights just for that, not the whole open air area.
Yeah.
But I cast just enough light to see up on the open hallway, which is what I like. I don't like walking through the dark. Obvious reasons. I think I've earned that fear of the dark.
You've got a history. It makes sense.
Yeah. And so I turned it on. I'm walking, and right as I pass the front door, I see movement to my left. Up, coming out of my parents' room into the bathroom. I caught that movement, and I turn, and I just see a 2D shape going into the bathroom from the parents' room. The bathroom is dark because the light doesn't quite illuminate into there, right?
Yeah.
I saw a whole ass leg from hip to foot going into that dark bathroom.
What?
No light comes on, no door closes. So I knew it wasn't someone coming. And plus, everyone was in the first floor anyway. And it just disappears. Being logically minded, not wanting it to be anything, I spent 10 minutes walking by the front door with the light. I left everything while it was, thinking, okay, because remember, we're on a dead end street and it's nighttime. Everyone's already home from work. But I was like, and I didn't see any lights.
No cars passing by.
No cars came by. And we're on a dead end street in a neighborhood. So it's not like dead end street next to a town where someone could flip around. If you were here, you lived there and everyone was home. And so, and I would have seen clearly the headlights. So it wasn't that. I thought maybe the way the light caught me from the overhead lights. I spent 10 minutes walking different speeds, angles, positions. I could not even get my shadow up there, let alone recreate anything close to it.
Oh man. Yeah, though that's the kind of stuff that freaks me out. Like, I think the normal, like, hearing voices and whispers, or even like weird interactions with stuff in the house, I think I could deal with that. But seeing a shadow person, yeah, that would probably
shadow people where I draw the line. Okay. Now, like I've said, I've thrown Catholic hands with ghosts, demons. Thank God, not voices yet. I'll do that all day long. Even spiritual warfare done against me, which I'll talk about, what I call the Demon Den here in San Antonio, an old abandoned brewery that I did security for for 2 weekends. Thank God I had a gun. It was 32 acres of completely abandoned urban decay. And there was some weird things there. That's for that other episode. But so I've had some experiences. So when I say I draw the line at shadow people, know how far that line goes.
Yeah, I will much further along.
I will punch a possessed person in the face without you having to ask me to. Probably if you say no, I'll still punch him. I will not. If you tell me there's a shadow person down the hall, I'm out. If it's my job, I quit.
There we go.
I don't get paid enough to deal with that. Unless you're gonna send me down there with a light blessed by the hope, like the Pope. If I'm not wearing a vest covered in LED lights with a super soaker holy water, I'm not going near a shadow person. No, that's because they exist between the planes. I ain't messing with that.
Yeah,
this plane or the other plane, I can do things with. I ain't messing with whatever the heck the shadow people are doing.
Nice.
No, they're not malicious. They're just creepy.
Yeah.
Nothing against them. I just no.
Nice. Well, all right, man. Well, definitely gonna have you back so we can talk about the spiritual warfare and the demon and the demon dens and all that fun stuff, and throwing Catholic hands. So
awesome. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me, and I look forward to arranging our next meeting.
Absolutely, man. Guys, I just want to say thanks for listening and experiencing another Dark Roast story with me. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and let me know in the comments if you've had an experience or a haunting or an encounter of some sort that followed you from place to place. Remember, you can find the show on most major platforms: YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Instagram. Just search for Tales from the Dark Roast. And wherever you're listening, leave us a comment, review, or just hit the like button if you're enjoying the Dark Roast. It helps me grow the show. And if you want to message me directly, you can do so through Facebook, or you can also drop me an email at tfdr.podcast@gmail.com, letting me know all about your experiences. Thanks for listening, and remember, stay safe and stay caffeinated out there, my friends. I'm William, and this has been Tales from the Dark Roast.